When I was in middle school, I got my very first pair of superhero-themed Converse. They were in style back then, and I remember being ecstatic while my parents paid for these babies at the cash register. I wore them all the time and still do, probably more than any other pair of shoes that I own. Rumors of a Wonder Woman movie had been circling around for years, even before these new reboots began, and I always remember thinking, someday, when they finally do make it, I'm wearing these to go watch the film. And last week that finally happened. The shoes are now all worn out, the laces are broken, the soles are coming off, but I won't be throwing them away anytime soon. As someone who's been waiting years for a film like this, I can say Wonder Woman didn't let me down at all. Holy shit, it's about time the DC Expanded Universe made a good movie, because frankly I was beginning to see the franchise as a sinking ship before this movie came along and saved it. Look, I'm a huge DC fan. Overall, I like the DC heroes better than the Marvel heroes. I can't tell you how much Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Harley and Joker merchandise I own, but it's no secret that in the past few years, the quality of films Marvel has been releasing has been way better than what DC has had to offer. I was way more excited to see Batman vs. Superman than I was to watch Civil War. I can't say how disappointed I was when I ended up watching Batman v Superman and it wasn't that good. Same goes with Suicide Squad. With Wonder Woman, the studio has finally put out a movie that's as good or better than what Marvel has been offering lately. It doesn't end here though. If DC doesn't step up its game to produce films as good as this one, they'll not only ruin the amazing legacy that this film created, but they'll also taint the characters of so many amazing heroes that are worth watching on the big screen. So I put together an outline of things that could definitely help the franchise take off. Obviously, I wasn't able to fit everything into this video. I could spend days talking about it, but here goes nothing. Up to now, we've seen these newer DC films, and I think it's safe to say that they haven't done a good job of developing proper origin stories for their characters. This ultimately ends up affecting the sequels that we've been seeing. Wonder Woman, I think, was the perfect example of what an origin story should be, so let's study it. The film introduces a character to us and we see her grow in order for her to become the person and hero that she is. What I think a lot of people didn't get was that Wonder Woman was the story of a child growing up. It's a coming-of-age story, metaphorically of course. Let me explain. Hippolyta says at the beginning of the movie that Diana is too young and inexperienced to understand the world. By the end of the film, Diana has matured. She has a better understanding of humanity. She understands that humans can be influenced, but it is ultimately the choices they make that define who they are. She understands that people are never 100% good or 100% evil, and that in a war, there's never a side that's completely to blame. These are the lessons she learns. This is a character that is as well developed as the themes that the movie brings up. We go on this journey with her, and we learn the lessons that she does. But as viewers from the outside, we also get to see her transform from this naive, unaware, innocent flower to a hardened hero with a better understanding of the world. Humanity hardens her. World War I hardens her. The hatred, evil, and corruption that she witnesses harden her, but they also give her strength, compassion, and charity. That is proper character development, and that is proper thematic development. Both characterization and themes go hand in hand here. Both are intertwined. You don't get any of what I just mentioned in the previous DC Extended Universe movies. In this movie, we see Diana grow physically, mentally, and metaphorically, and that's how you make a proper origin story. The concept of an origin story exists for us to watch the character come into his or her own. Now, how do you turn that into a trilogy? Well, let's look at Marvel for help. Iron Man is a good example that we can use. In the first film, Tony Stark is an adult all throughout, obviously, but we still watch him mature in a similar way that Diana does. By the end, he doesn't take things for granted anymore, and he learns valuable lessons about life that he holds close throughout the entire rest of the series. Just like Diana, Tony has a fixed personality. Diana is confident, determined, kind, benevolent, etc. Tony is confident, boastful, hubristic, sardonic, and so on. These are their core characteristics. You can't take those away or you'll ruin the essence of what they are. However, in a trilogy like the Iron Man films, you can add things to the character and modify them in a way that they continue to learn and experience throughout. In trilogies, you want your protagonists to grow even more as characters. Iron Man does this beautifully. Tony continues to learn in each movie and while remaining true to who he is. He learns different lessons because each film has different theses, but at least the major themes in the Iron Man franchise will always continue to remain the same. And that's how you properly do characterization. Wonder Woman got the first solo film down in that aspect. No sequel or threequel has been confirmed yet, but if they do make the series a trilogy, that's the way to go, guys. And the same goes for all the other DC movies. Like, did we see any of what I just mentioned about Iron Man in the last two Man of Steel movies? No, there was little to no character development between the beginning of movie 1 to the end of movie 2. In fact, Clark Kent learns nothing in the second movie at all. Maybe the reason he was so underdeveloped in Batman v Superman was because he only had 43 lines in the entire movie. Yeah, the entire movie, which was supposed to be a sequel to Man of Steel, barely had the Man of Steel in it, and while the first movie was definitely better, it still wasn't unflawed. Critics argued that many of the flashbacks were unnecessary because they didn't contribute to plot or theme of the movie, and didn't help characterize the main character either. To further prove my point, I dare you to watch Man of Steel again and count how many lines he has in his adult flashbacks. And remember how I gave the full analysis of Wonder Woman's character earlier and said that the film's character development and thematic development go hand in hand in this movie? Well, it turns out that Man of Steel and Batman v Superman don't do a good job of showing this. BVS was just a complete mess in every single aspect, so it would take too long for me to talk about it. But Man of Steel, on the other hand, just throws a whole bunch of themes at you, and then kind of just leaves them lying there without developing them any further. The one theme it doesn't bring up is killing as an unethical choice, which means that the following scene makes no sense. Since the movie never really spends time developing the idea that Superman doesn't kill, the audience is left wondering why Superman cries in agony when Zod dies, and why this is so important. How do we learn anything about the superhero if the film never bothers telling us his ethical code? The ethical code is something superhero flicks, especially DC movies, have done a good job of showing us in the last few decades. The original Superman films showed us this, the Dark Knight series showed us this, even those two really bad Joel Schumacher movies taught us Batman's moral code. Wonder Woman was the latest film to do this correctly. She says she fights for justice, she wants to bring peace and end chaos. Her actions from the beginning of the movie all the way throughout show us that she doesn't have a problem with killing as long as it's an enemy and it's necessary because it helps her achieve her final goal. Superman is supposed to be against killing in Man of Steel, but the movie never tells us this and then expects us to know it already. Now, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman aren't the only two movies to criticize here. Suicide Squad didn't do any of what I mentioned earlier too well either, and unless Joss Whedon manages to save the Justice League movie, I wouldn't say that there's much hope for that one either. Suicide Squad and Justice League are what some people are calling crossover films. In these types of movies, characters from different series but the same cinematic universe get together and fight towards a common goal. The movie that really popularized this concept of the cinematic universe was The Avengers. This was also a crossover film, but unlike Suicide Squad, it got a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes and became so damn successful that it spun a sequel, had all of the characters come back a third time for Civil War, and then announced 2 more sequels set for 2018 and 19. So let's take a look at The Avengers. Part of what makes The Avengers so good is its ability to create a good dynamic between the characters that give each one of them a space to shine on their own. Empire magazine called it a joyous blend of heroism and humor that raises the stakes even as it maintains a grip on what makes each one of the individual characters tick. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Part of the reason each one of the 6 main characters is developed so well, despite the fact that each is being juggled within a limited amount of screen time, is because we've seen them all in movies before, with the exception of Hawkeye. The characters were already constructed, so like I said before with Iron Man, all the filmmakers had to do at this phase was work with what they already had and develop them a little further, make them grow even more as characters, because character development is key. Part of the reason the characterization was so bad in Suicide Squad was because we hadn't seen any of the characters on the big screen before. This was basically an origin story for 8 different characters, not counting Slipknot. You don't do that in a crossover movie. Obviously they weren't able to fit everyone's origin in properly, so they just squashed everyone's story in only 10 minutes, using the laziest method possible. Since we don't know almost anything about their characteristics, we're left sort of grasping for information about what distinguishes them from one another. You could argue that maybe Harley Quinn and Deadshot, the film's ostensible main characters, are a bit better explored. Maybe Diablo and Rick Flag too. We don't get much insight on Killer Croc or Captain Boomerang. The movie mentions something about Katana being a widow, but doesn't explore it any further. We don't get to know June Moon too well either, because she's possessed throughout almost the entire movie. Slipknot was almost completely unnecessary, functioning only to show us how the neck bombs work. And then we have other characters to consider, like Amanda Waller and the Joker, who weren't used to their full potential either. There just wasn't enough space for everybody. Imagine how much different the movie would have been if they released the Batman, Aquaman, Flash, and all the other superhero movies first, so that we could meet the bad guys there. They could have given these bad guys really cool character arcs, like they did with Loki in the Thor movies, and like they did with the Joker in the Dark Knight series. That way, when you make Suicide Squad later, we know their dynamics, and we can spend the movie giving them all chemistry, like the Avengers did. But no, Warner Bros. Just decided to churn this movie out as fast as they could, because Harley's popularity seems to be rising. And I don't want to judge the film before it comes out, but I'm wondering if Justice League is going to be any different from the mess we got with Suicide Squad. Aquaman, Flash, and Cyborg are all three heroes who haven't gotten their own standalone films yet. Other than that, we have Batman and Superman, who were both completely undercooked in the first two movies, so it's unclear to me how the filmmakers are going to further develop them when they haven't even developed them in the first place. Wonder Woman did have her own standalone film, and it was amazing, as I've already said, but I'm scared that they're going to ruin her here by making her as one-dimensional as the rest of them. So, you guys want to know something funny? Out of all the people who have directed the new DC Extended Universe movies so far, the only one to get good reviews hasn't been signed for a sequel yet. Let me further explain. Zack Snyder made Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, and David Ayer made Suicide Squad. Patty Jenkins directed Wonder Woman. Man of Steel, BVS, and Suicide Squad all received terrible reviews from critics, and most fans weren't too happy about them either. Wonder Woman, on the other hand, is currently at 92%. It is literally the only movie of the extended universe up to now to get such a high grade. In fact, it was the only one to score anything higher than an F, because if you went to school at any given point of your life, you know that anything below 60 is an F. Wonder Woman didn't just receive positive reviews from critics, and fans were ecstatic as well. I didn't meet a single person almost who didn't like the movie. In fact, most people I know worshipped it, and Patty Jenkins, who was relatively unknown as a director before this film, is now a star. And even though she has been praised for directing this movie, Patty Jenkins is the only one of these three people who hasn't been offered to direct another DC movie yet. So, what's the deal, Warner Bros? I don't want to sound like an asshole for criticizing Snyder and Ayer. Both of them are more successful than I will ever be in my entire life. But if things are going in a certain pattern and that pattern looks bad, why not put an end to it? David Ayer, who did such a bad job directing the crossover film that was Suicide Squad, was given Birds of Prey, which is another crossover. Zack Snyder, who made the mess that was Batman vs. Superman, got to direct Justice League, which is arguably going to be the biggest DC movie yet. In fact, it's unclear to me how Zack Snyder was even put in charge of the DCEU. I mean, if you look at the Rotten Tomato scores of the movies he's directed so far, you get an average of 50.7%. David Ayer doesn't look much better. The movies he's directed hold an average of 48.5%. Now, if you take a look at Patty Jenkins' work, you'll see that her Rotten Tomato average is 87%. That's a high-ass score for a movie director. Sure, she's only made 2 films so far, but Monster has a higher score than anything Zack Snyder's ever done, and Wonder Woman has a higher score than anything either one of them has ever done. So it's not like she lacks experience. Both of these films were done with very different budgets, and both were great. Plus, she's directed award-winning television episodes of famous shows, so frankly, it's actually kind of insulting that her contract didn't include a second sequel, but the other two did. It definitely gives me hope that Jenkins said that they're working it out and she'll likely direct a sequel, but I haven't seen Warner Bros. Say anything about it yet. And honestly, everybody else is on board. Fans are on board, critics are all writing articles about why the hell she hasn't been signed for a second movie yet. She herself said she'd be willing to do it, so why haven't we seen any sort of a movement yet? One of the very, very many things that was great about Wonder Woman was how great everyone was in it. This was a truly collaborative effort in filmmaking. I love that they hired an amazing director, Patty Jenkins, who was able to incorporate the visual style of Snyder's movies into this one, because I will admit that if there's one thing Zack Snyder is good at, it's cinematography. Those slow-motion shots going in and out of the fight scenes are amazing, and they show Snyder's oversight as a producer, so credit where credit is due. However, I do see a lot of people giving him a lot of credit for having written the movie, and fun fact, he didn't actually write it. The reason he got writing credits in the end was because he came up with the story, and he did that together with 2 other people. He didn't write the screenplay though. The screenplay was written by this guy called Alan Heinberg, not Zack Snyder. Overall, when I started my research for this portion of the video, I was a bit pessimistic because I wasn't particularly happy about everything I said earlier, but I gotta say, Warner Bros. Seems to be trying to improve the quality of the DC movies. I know that James Wan, the director of the critically acclaimed movies like The Conjuring, Saw, and Furious 7, is going to direct Aquaman. Matt Reeves, who is responsible for the critical and commercial success movies like The Planet of the Apes and Cloverfield, is going to direct the Batman reboots. Zack Snyder had to quit filming Justice League because of his daughter's death, and may she rest in peace. I may criticize his movies sometimes, but I am in no way thankful that she died and he had to leave his work because of it. My heart goes out to him and his family. However, the guy who took over the project and is filming the final scenes and reshoots right now is Joss Whedon. If you don't know who Joss Whedon is, Avengers 2, Firefly, Buffy, yeah. And who knows if it'll actually end up being good though. It sounds to me like the production is kind of chaotic right now with all the changes, but hiring Whedon is, in this case, a step in the right direction, I guess. Joss Whedon will also be directing Batgirl, which will be awesome, and anyone who follows his career knows why. Of course, it doesn't just rely on the director. Everyone needs to work equally well. The screenplay in Wonder Woman wasn't extraordinary, but it was decent. It served its purpose. It was better than the script from BVS that I criticized earlier. The editor of Wonder Woman did a way better job than the guy who edited Suicide Squad. There hasn't been much of a problem with any of the actors yet, so it better stay that way. Don't hire someone for any reason other than how they're going to play the character, okay? The cinematography in many of these is great. That was probably Wonder Woman's greatest achievement on the technical spectrum. I'm not sure how I feel about all these movies being churned out in such a weird order, but hey, as long as the people working on the films are talented enough, there's no reason it shouldn't be alright in the end. These are some steps in the right direction. Now, give Jenkins another fucking contract, please. Anyway, that was enough of a video for today. That ended up being a lot longer than expected. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Check out my other stuff. I don't just do video essays like this. I also do theories and analysis from time to time, so be sure to check those out as well. Other than that, tell me what you want to watch below, and I will do my best to make a video about it. See you soon!